Hey, so here's a little video on Bossa Dorado. First, I'm going to just make the loop. I think I might as well show you how I do it. So I've got the intro, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's your intro. And here I'm going to play down the chords of the head. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, one of the very first things that you can do, and you should do, is make sure you really know the roots. So, beginning, we've got this, just do whole notes even. Got this cool drone thing going. I'm also a fan of chunk, 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 chunk. To really get the groove while you're doing this. So there's the roots through the main head. Let's say we're going to work on just the thirds. This is a really important one because the thirds always tell you whether the chord is major or minor. There's a lot of information in this. It's also a really good anchor note to hit during your solos. So here I'm going to run through all of the, I'm just going to go on the head, all of just the thirds. So starting on the D minor chord, I'm going to play an F. 1, 2, 3, 4. G sharp. All right, so you could keep going with this. You could go for the fifths. The sevenths are the other really important one. Well, you just play the exact same thing that I just did with thirds, but you nail only sevenths. Now, if you don't have a seventh, for instance, this starts with probably a D minor chord, which is just a triad. You know, maybe then you just hit the root. You say, okay, well, I'm going to hit the root. Yeah, I'll show you a little of that. So this is sevenths, or if you don't have If there is no seventh in the chord, I'm just going to play the root. 1, 2, 3, no seventh. E7, it's still D. E diminished, still D. Let's try that again. E7, E diminished, G. No root, no seventh on that G minor. Hard to do that and speak, sorry, you have to concentrate. Okay, so let's look back though at the thirds, because the thirds are really like the meat and potatoes, the big important stuff that tells you right away my major and my minor. So I'm going to do a little solo only using, I'm just going to play thirds. I'm not going to play any neighboring tones. I'm just going to do thirds of each chord. And I'm going to do it while also leaving tasteful space and grooving. So let's try this. So my first note, I've got a D minor chord, so my first note's going to be F. 1, 2, 3, 4. It out. I was like, oh, maybe long lines would be prettier. Already that almost sounds like a solo. It's pretty close. You definitely are showing that you know exactly what is happening with the chord changes. You are navigating through them. You're changing when, for instance, when the home key kind of changes to a new group of chords. You are totally catching that very clearly, without even having to think about all those little nitty-gritty things. Okay, so now I'm going to show you now the same thing, but I'm just going to add a few neighbor tones. So this means I'm just going to add some notes underneath and above, but I'm still focusing completely on my thirds. And this is a totally legitimate way of soloing. I think that you can get a really solid solo by just doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So sometimes it's hard to only do that, but if you can limit yourself, you're going to create less options, and less options are actually good in this case. You'll notice also I was leaving a lot of space, and I was using that space to think, as well as letting it kind of groove and stuff, and I get a chance to really fit into the whatever your groove that you're playing with. These sort of gypsy bossas, I like to do that kind of feel. It's a little similar to a regular bossa nova, but a little bit different too. I think I stole some of these grooves definitely from Dorado Schmidt and Stokelo Rosenberg. Those are good guys to listen to for this. I think this is one of their tunes, in fact. Let's see. Okay, so then after... Oh, and the other thing, I was going above and below sometimes, randomly. Trust your ear. Don't worry too much about, okay, is this going to be a half step below or a whole step below? Or is this going to be a whole step above or a half step above the third? Because your ear will tell you that. And you have a good enough ear. Don't worry about all the theory figuring out stuff. Just trust that. And if you hear it and you try, okay, I'm on the D minor chord and I'm trying a half step up, it's probably going to sound a little weird. Now, you might want that weirdness. You might be like, hey, I like this. It's not necessarily wrong. It's just a little weird. Nothing wrong with that at all, ever. Let's see. So we've got... First, you did roots, you did thirds, you did sevenths. Then you did anchor notes, only the third. And then you did anchor notes, the third, with a neighboring tone above or below. I think that's a really, really good place to start for this. After you get those neighbor tones, the way that you really make this kind of connect from chord to chord, sometimes you have neighbor tones that are not very close to each other. Now, the very beginning, the D minor to the E7, those aren't bad. You got an F, you're going to go to a G sharp at some point. So there's already kind of a scale. Here. Right? You heard that? I kind of went F, G, G sharp. And that one fits together really nice, and it's kind of like good voice leading. It's also just a good melody, doesn't hop crazy, right? Now, there are some times when you're going to have to hop, like from the E half diminished to an A7. That means that you're going from a G to a tritone away. Now, in order to do that, from G to C sharp, it's all right like that. But if you were trying to make it a little bit more nice voice leading, maybe here you do add a sort of a scale from the lower note to the higher note, or from the first note to the second. It could be up or down. So for instance, let's see, I'm gonna... So that's just E half diminished to A7. I'm on the G. I'm going to a C sharp. How can you get from a G? You can make up whatever scale you want to try. What's it called? I don't know, that one, if I throw in the B natural during the E half diminished, it might sound weird because you've got that rub against the B flat, but we can try it and see. Yeah, probably a little weird, but what if I landed on the B natural on the new chord? So I go... That works. And then I'm going... Or... You know. So the thing that I'm just saying here is that you can add little scales to get in between them once you feel pretty confident just nailing your anchor note and your neighboring tones. Here, I'll give you just I'll try an example of this is like a real solo that I would do, maybe focusing a little more on those neighbor tones than I would all the time. Let's see. want. You can also just find scales that work on these chords, and you can figure that out. You know, for instance, a Mixolydian scale, the big scary word, but all it is okay. You got an E7, right? E7 chord. E, G sharp, B, D natural, right? A Mixolydian scale is just a major scale that happens to have a lowered seventh. So that's major. Lowering the D sharp to a D natural is going to make it into a scary word, Mixolydian, but all it is a major scale with a lowered seventh. And so whenever you get this chord, then you got right? But I want you to keep trying to find your own scales that work just by, okay, arpeggiate it and then say, wow, what could I put in between? That's kind of cool. Or you could do more default. And then while you're practicing this kind of stuff, do them in patterns. Do them in groups. So I'm just doing random patterns of. Now when I say random, I mean that I'm coming up with an initial pattern. So bum 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 bum, and then I do the same thing on the next note. And you're not thinking about whole and half steps. You're thinking about the notes inside the scale, and it's like, 1 1 2 2 1 1 3 3. 2 2 3 3 2 2 4 4. You're just twisting these and moving them on. Yeah, I think for you right now, focusing on just nailing your thirds. You should do your roots too, but nail your thirds and work on just adding little neighbor tones right now. Because instantly that's going to sound pretty much like a solo. I mean, here, I'll go through one more time just doing that. So I'm just going to hit thirds, and I'm going to hit a neighbor tone above or below it. Neighbor tone is just the note next to it. There we go. So we've got, I'll do it from the intro. And as you're doing this, focus on your rhythm a little. And leave space. Every once in a while, I kept doing this. I went on the A7, I was playing a C sharp, and I just couldn't help myself. I went up one more. So that's not exactly a neighbor tone. It's a little bit of a scale, but it's just like C sharp, D, E. I just went up one more. Could have done that. All you're doing is you're expanding. You're going neighbor tone, and then a little bit more. I hope this helps. Let me know.